Hello, BookTube. I'm a little bit late getting to my own Stevestream because I have a last minute distraction out the window that I simply cannot believe. I simply cannot believe what I'm seeing, and I know what I'm going to see in the next few minutes, the next 5 minutes or so. There's this window when the AC unit is not in the window. It looks right down on a field. I have commented for months and months that there has been a bunny that just sort of hangs out in the middle of that field, too far away from the verge of the trees, too far away from the woodpile, so that if a hawk were to stoop on it, it could not possibly save itself. And yet it stays out there, just oblivious, in the middle of this field. So I've dubbed it the suicide bunny. There's no sign of the suicide bunny today because it is drizzly and chilly and rainy. It has been all day. And just a few minutes ago, just as this stream was about to go live, some guy came out onto that field with a ladder, an extendable ladder, and he has propped it against the lower branches of a tree to do something way up in the tree. He couldn't carry the ladder right. He couldn't deploy it right. He took a while to figure out how to extend it. He certainly has not braced it. The grass is wet. The ground is mud. It's like watching me do something like this, except I wouldn't. I would have the sense not to. He is now, he didn't brace the ladder against the tree. He braced the ladder against lower branches of the tree and is now well, at least 20 feet above the ground. He is going to fall. And he is above a few sawed off tree stumps. So if he falls, he's almost certainly going to cripple himself for life. So we, instead of a suicide bunny, we have a suicide bonehead, which really isn't what I was expecting at all. I actually have, you're so gonna die. I actually have a subject in mind to kick off this Steve stream, which can't be long. This has to be a short Steve stream. But I want to know the subject in the heading of the Steve stream was reading, but it's specifically there's a specific thing about reading that I was hoping I could drill down on a little, which is how you pick your next book. How specifically do you do that? I want to know from all the different viewpoints of this. There are some people who are very, very methodical about it. Excuse me. There are some people who have are so much mood readers that they've sort of enshrined their mood reading and make sure that their next book is random, even if they really liked the kind of book they just finished, and up their chances of really liking the next one by reading something similar. They won't do it because they've so enshrined their status as a mood reader. And then there's everybody in between. And I want to know uh, I want to know how your what your own process is. Do you wipe the slate clean when you finish a book and think, okay, well, so for my next book, I'm going to try to what do I want to read next? On that level, all of us are mood readers. What do I want to read next? What kind of a thing, just in the broadest possible terms? Once you've decided that, okay, well, why not balance yourself with one leg off the ladder? What's the worst that could happen? God help us. I can't believe I get a ringside seat to this person crippling himself on a rainy day, whatever he is thinking of doing, on a sliding ladder, braced in mud, in the rain, whatever he was thinking of doing could wait until the rain is over. Instead, I guess this is what emergency room staffs are paid for, right? But when you get to that point of here is just in general what I want to read next, the general kind of thing I want to read next, then what do you do? Do you go to your shelves and find an example of that thing, pull it down, and go to work? Do you go straight to your Kindle and not bother with your shelves, or do you consult? Do you estimate what would be the best version, the best example of the kind of thing you want to read next? Do you even, God forbid, consult book critics? I noticed that although all of you email me, oh, not all of you, that would be a dream come true, but a lot of you email me and you do it regularly. A lot of you Voxer with me and do it regularly, and that is wonderful. I want more of that. Absolutely want more of that. This is not a typical parasocial relationship. But I've noticed that although there's a lot of that, there's very little of asking me for book recommendations. Usually, the requests for book recommendations that I get are of the extremely obnoxious kind. They're the kind that isn't personal. It's just you're not real. You're not a person. You're a machine. I'm going to put a coin in, and I want my 5 minutes worth of just you droning on, as opposed to one friend asking another friend, a sexier friend, what their next book should be. Or, do you have any recommendations? Most people get that. Most people know how to do that. It's only once in a while that I will get an email from people, from someone who's treating me as what I used to refer to back in the pre-internet days as fact boy. That used to drive me crazy when I would meet new people at my bookstore, and there was always the kind of sifting in my mind is, okay, is this a new person? Is this just a coworker? Is this someone I should treat very gently? They don't have a sense of humor. They're prone to cry. Or is it someone that I can be a little bit more friendly with? Or is it a potential friend, a potential actual friend in the real world? And a surefire sign that it was not ever going to be a real actual friend in the real world is that they just bombarded me with fact boy questions, something they could easily look up themselves. They don't care what I think of it. Once upon a time in like the early 1990s, I actually went through a year of this with a young guy at the bookstore, and then finally at my info desk, right before the lunch rush, I turned to him and said, "Do you realize that it's been a year, almost to the day, since we met here at this information desk?" And he said, "Oh wow, how do you remember that?" And I said, "Because in that entire time, you have ever never asked me how I am. Instead, it's, hey Steve, tell me about the Ostrogoths." And he barely ever spoke to me after that because that was revealed, so he couldn't do that. He absolutely was not interested in anything else. Wasn't interested in any kind of a friendship at all, any kind of a conversation even. I still get some of that in emails, but a lot of people know how to email me. They get how to email, but even the people who do that don't often ask for, what should I read next? So I'm assuming that means that if you don't ask me, uh, then you don't consult any other book critics. You don't consult their reading works. I'm the only one that's actually in captivity on BookTube, but there are plenty of book critics out there. I'm assuming then that mostly you don't do that. So what is it that you do? If you have reached the precipice, let's say you finish a book, you want to start something else, what do? You don't consult critics. I'm hoping you don't consult Amazon or anything like that. I'm hoping they don't consult aggregator sites. So is it just circumscribed or mainly circumscribed by the books you actually own that fit the bill for what you feel like doing next? I would love to know. I think it's fascinating. It's been on my mind today. Yeah, that's just how you come down a ladder. Yeah, absolutely. So you watch Jim Kirk go down a ladder in Star Trek 2 and you think you can do it. You are so going to fall and break your neck. And I hate to say it because it's going to be on live camera, but I am going to laugh when it happens. I would have sense enough not to do this. You should have sense enough not to do this. It's I gotta love the pith helmet. Like that's gonna help you if you land on your lower back from 25 feet up on a sawed off tree stump. A pith helmet on your head is not gonna help you at all. It's not gonna help you to walk again for the rest of your life. Anyway, it was on my mind because a friend of mine who's not on BookTube doesn't know me through BookTube, doesn't watch my channel, of course, since none of my real world friends watch my channel. Uh, a friend of mine, we have been in a dialogue for decades about what his next book should be. Whenever it crops up, what should my next book be? I'm going to ask you not because you're a fact boy, but because you've been right a lot more often than you've been wrong. In fact, in his recollection, I've never been wrong. And it's handy. I'm the first person to admit that. I don't like fact boy questions, but I admit that I am handy because I've read more than you have, and I remember it all. So that can often help quite a bit. We got to talking not just about what his next book should be, but also what the feeling is, because he has maintained forever and ever that I don't know what that feeling is. That's one of the many ways he has always claimed I am not like the fellow readers that I love. That I'm not like them, even though I love them, because I just leap on from one book to the next. There are so many in an unending torrent that the idea of pausing and stroking my chin, dude bro style, to ponder on my next read, it is totally alien to me. I would never in a million years do it. There is an endless onslaught, a torrent of books. So I don't hesitate at all for a minute. And my friend says, and I'm sure that he's right, that most readers aren't like that. They do kind of hesitate. So let's switch over to the chat. I noticed there's a chat and see what people are saying. So a whole bunch of people saying hi. That's great. Jared Henderson is here. Lately, I just email you. Oh, in in reference to what you should read next. Well, yes, yes, yes. Jared does occasionally just fire off the email, but I never, even for a fraction of a second, suspected. I know when I'm going to get fact boy. I know when that's going to happen, uh, and I don't feel that with Jared Henderson, so I don't worry about it at all. Grace's Gazette. I don't think I know that name. If it's not required reading for school, a book club, or reviewing, I'm a mood reader. Then it's whatever strikes my fancy between what I own and my holds released from the library at the time. Yeah, well, I would argue that it's mostly mood reading when you get right down to it. Just like with NaNoWriMo, which I'm not yelling at you about in this Steve stream. The NaNoWriMo distinction is between plotters, people who plot out what they're going to write, pantsers, which means seat of the pants, where you don't do any plotting, and then plantsers, the name they made up for the people who do some plotting but not exhaustive plotting and do still make things up by the seat of their pants as they're going along. And the more I thought about that, and especially the more I did it, the more I realized that everyone is a pantser, is a plantser. No one completely plots and no one completely pantses. So everyone's a planter. I think in the same sense, when you get down to the very moment of choosing, unless it's assigned reading for a school or for a job, there is going to be an element of mood involved. I think that's unavoidable. Although I'm curious to know, Grace's Gazette, what reviewing is it that we're talking about? Are you talking about reviewing for Goodreads or Amazon or something like that? Or are you talking about reviewing somewhere else? Monet Doyle, I'm a mood reader, and I'm reading a book called All's Fair in Love and Chocolate by Amy Andrews. I found a book called Sweeter Than Chocolate that I want to read next. Okay, but will you read it next? So you're reading All's Fair in Love and Chocolate, a sweet themed romance by the sound of it. And Sweeter Than Chocolate sounds like it's the same thing. Will you read it next? If you really like, or even if you don't like All's Fair in Love and Chocolate, will it determine? Do you typically do that? You say you're a mood reader, but if you like a chocolate themed romance and the next thing you read because of that is a chocolate themed romance, that's not mood reading, right? That's scratching an itch. That's so I'm wondering how often that is true. RTL, LTR, I usually switch back and forth between door stoppers and shorter books, less than, say, 300 pages. Okay, but right, but that would still leave open the question of which of either you choose. There'd still be okay. So the variation between sizes, that is not mood driven. That is not up for grabs. But the individual example of the size category is going to be up for grabs, and I'd like to know what makes that decision. The bookish knitter is here now. Sarah is far more systematic in what she will read next. I think on your channel you have called yourself a mood reader, but the way you plot out what you're going to read is it's far more systematic than I do. For instance, far more systematic than most of what I've seen. It seems very. It seems like you take a great deal of joy in giving shape to what you're going to read next. Uh, Aaron, read a book. I am a mood reader with some structure from BookTube events. I tend to browse my massive collection of unread books, give up, and then buy something new. I love it. I love it. Anything that is the opposite of the 500 book challenge is fine by me. So that, but okay, I'm really curious to know. This still doesn't answer the question any more than the large book versus small book does, because what you're going to buy new will still be a choice. What is that choice? What is the mechanism that determines where you're going to go next? I feel sorry for your unread books, but I guess that goes without saying. Tidides, I add a book to my TBR list when I come across after something I want to read. I'm not particularly moody, but I tend to choose a different genre from the one I've just read. Okay, but does that apply uh, if the genre that you've just read was a humdinger? If you read something and loved it, does that predispose you to pick something similar? I think that's only natural. That's only human nature, but I wonder how much that applies. Tidy is back again. As for recommendations, I just skim over your videos and check for enthusiasm and passion. Don't I have enthusiasm for almost everything I talk about? Might be a little hard to determine. I don't know. Beth Hendy, very much a mood reader. Yes, I'm getting the feeling that everybody's going to call themselves a mood reader. Uh, I'll scan my shelves after I've decided on a genre. Seasonal reader too. Spooky reading now. I want to watch The Changeling on Apple TV, so I'm reading the book now. Okay. So determined in part by the season as well. That's interesting. D Temple 54. I jump back and forth between various genres: history, crime fiction, biography. Generally, I look at the authors I like. Often, I go to my favorite used bookstore and browse. So at the moment of truth, it is still just a jump. When you're at that used bookstore and browsing, what's going to cause you to reach out and grab something? Maybe it's not quantifiable, the thing I'm asking about, but I'd love to know. And also, when you're browsing in that used bookstore and you reach out and grab something, is there a difference in your mind? Do you sometimes grab things that you want and other times grab things that you know are going to be the next thing you read? Is that feeling different from moment to moment? Jared Henderson. I keep a list of books I want to read. When I'm done with a book, I consult the list and see what catches my eye. Viraconium was recently added to the list. Oh, the Viraconium books. Suddenly everybody's talking about them, and that is wonderful to me. Absolutely wonderful because they are so great. They're just so great. uh, let's see here. Jared Henderson again. I definitely stroke my beard while deciding. Well, yes. Yes, I was I was assuming that's what it's there for. Monet Doyle, nobody can ever recommend me books to read because I am a huge romance reader and people don't read the books I like. Well, so that's not people in person. Do you go anywhere else for recommendations of romance? There are romance booktubers. None of them strike your fancy. Leo Percara, hello Steve. Can you spot a sensitivity reader editing stuff in some new books you're reading, or is it somewhat hidden? I don't know if I can spot sensitivity readers. But after a while, it doesn't matter. Once in the mainstream of so-called literary fiction, especially the genre fictions, once you have threatened a writing community long enough, once you've terrorized them, they'll start to censor themselves, so that the result will be the same. The result will be the same as if there were a sensitivity reader or 10 sensitivity readers. I, I don't know that I can spot the individual reader, but I can definitely tell the kind of utterly useless prose that results from that process, either someone else censoring you or you censoring yourself. Uh, Hence, another reason why I sing the praises of indie publishing. Uh, Balin321, bonjour. Aren't we being cosmopolitan? Although I can't help but notice that even at a different time, we're not getting the same number of people. Not three digits. I'm not complaining at all. I've got wonderful people here, but this is 2 hours earlier, and still no. Very interesting. Jared Henderson is back. I would consult more critics, but I don't know enough about contemporary critics to know which publications I should be checking regularly. Which publications should I check? NYRB. NYRB is not so good at recommending books, right? They're not a daily newspaper, so you're going to get long disquisitions on books that may end up small r recommending a book to you by interesting you in it, but it's not their goal one way or another to say whether or not the book is immediately to weigh its pros and cons in front of you in the way that a weekly book critic or daily book critic does. If I were you, I would have said I would stick with for reviews. I would stick with the big three A-list newspapers and a few other venues. But the big three A-list newspapers feels really wobbly today. That would be the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. But it feels really wobbly after that article that the Washington Post ran about, sure, the Republicans are thoroughly evil and they hate ordinary Americans, and their leader, their God, is an autocrat who tried to overthrow the government. But you got to give this to Trump. He sure knows how to dress. In the Washington Post, in the last full calendar year of American democracy, so I kind of don't even. I know a lot of people at the Post. I kind of don't even want to give them credit for existing as a paper, much less extol their book reviews. But for instance, the Fiction Chronicle of the Wall Street Journal, if you're interested in the contemporary fiction, certainly won't let you down. And a lot their weekend books coverage is excellent, regardless of the fact that if you go just 4 pages inland to the op-ed section, they are vociferously advocating for fascism. uh, let's see here. Where'd you go? We don't have a whole lot of people, but we still get the chat still manages to jump on me. Weirdness in history. That's a name that's new to me. Hey Steve, what is your opinion on Virginia Woolf's Jacob's Room? I just finished it. It was my first Woolf book, and it's hard to get into. What do you recommend I read next? Uh, I like Jacob's Room, but I'm not an objective critic when it comes to Virginia Woolf. But she and I get along a lot. Uh, I would need to, in other words, in response to what you should read next, uh, I would need to know, especially if you're connecting it with Jacob's Room, I would need to know what you found hard about getting into. I need to know more about what you liked and didn't like about it. Do you want to stay in Bloomsbury? Do you want to stay with Virginia Woolf? Or for your next book, you found Jacob's Room hard to get into, so I want to move on to somewhere else. I need to know both of those things before I could recommend something. Uh, the Spaminator, he had that much trouble with the ladder, balancing on one leg. Rain, that's what I get for hiring the cheapest spy in the directory. He wasn't even looking at me. I don't know what he's doing. Uh, he managed to come down off the ladder without dying, but he isn't leaving. Instead, he is standing there, leaning against a ladder, his feet in the mud, in the rain, doing, as far as I can tell, nothing at all. I don't know. Imagine it. Just imagine it. When you could be sitting in a chair with a dog on your lap reading. Strongly considering that for the little book room. Strongly considering the idea of adding an easy chair to the little book room. There is not one now, but there is room for one. Imagine if that were a separate place for me to sit and read. The easy chair would have to be pretty good, and it would need to be lugged in here and lugged into that room and set up in place. And I don't do any lugging. And my surly houseboy isn't going to do any extra lugging. So obviously, this requires David Murphy. David Murphy must come here with his bantamweight muscles and do all the lugging for me. I'll get to work on that. Jared Henderson's back. I have to bounce around between genres. If I just read a fantasy novel in a series, I like to read something else before reading another fantasy novel or continuing the series. Is that always true, though? I mean, if you read a fantasy novel and you dearly love it, you're not in any way tempted to just read another fantasy novel? That's how fantasy readers are made. That's why the fantasy community on BookTube is so insular, because that's how they got that way, Darwinianly speaking. Uh, uh, Tydides, I tend to give preference to the older works and the works of Western canon over the others. Sometimes I intercede with a good fantasy or science fiction. That's about it. Guess mood takes from there. So you lean in the direction of the Western canon. Okay, but that still leads to questions of choice. Not necessarily even just the item on the Western canon that you're picking, but also which version of it. I mean, you have a large taste for the Western canon. Does that mean you download a lot of free ebooks from Project Gutenberg and read them on your Kindle? There we have Monks and Wine by Desmond Seward. Desmond Seward is a historian. He did a great slim volume on the Hundred Years' War. He did a great biography of Henry V. I honestly don't see his biography of Henry V get mentioned enough. And it is a bolt of lightning. It's not long and baggy at all. It's short and wonderful. And I saw him. I get those daily aggregator things, just your daily book deals or BookBub or Book Gorilla or Book Barbarian or whatever. And this was on there for free. A Desmond Stewart book I've never read. Now, so I downloaded it. Of course, you hit the button and it downloads straight to your Amazon device. It goes straight to Kindle. And you might think, okay, well, that's great. You've got this aggregator site giving you $1 or free books, but what does it matter since you don't really own them? Well, you're not out anything. You can get. I get 4 or 5 free ebooks a day. I'm not out anything for any of them, and who knows what I might like one of them. I certainly like this thing. Theoretically, I suppose Amazon could delete it from my device tomorrow, but I don't think they will. And even if they did, it's easy come, easy go. So, but anyway, James Rucala, not a mood reader at all. I've got most of my reads picked out for the rest of the year, with room for occasional swerves if Steve or Randy Ray suggests something intriguing. Uh, okay, that puts you in the distinct minority here. This is mostly uh, mood readers. So you're not at all. You've got it all planned out with a little leeway left for me and Randy Ray. I'm assuming you also meant to include Michael K. Vaughan. It seems to be that me and Randy Ray and Michael K. Vaughan are sort of hitting the same register with a lot of people who watch. Uh, Tim Gaynor, how is your audio good on the live stream? My audio is a mystery. I don't understand audio at all. I have no idea, none whatsoever. You'd think it would be the same, either good or bad, because it's using the same material in the MacBook, but no, no. M, I'm the same as Aaron, have unread books, but sometimes the mood just isn't there for any of them and have to go and buy something else. I usually have a look and pull something off the shelf I feel drawn to. Interesting. Pull something off the shelf in order to buy it at a used bookstore. Oh, interesting. Ewan Sinclair, I tend to read books in a similar style back to back, like being drawn to a succession of Gothic novels. Then I'll feel compelled to veer off in a completely different direction. Okay. All right. I was kind of expecting that that would be the main answer here. Just exactly that. That I asked this question 40 years ago to a group of customers, and that was in by a huge majority the answer that I got, that they'll read something, like it, and sort of mine that vein for a while until they either get bored or they find a bad example. You're the first person to bring it up in this stream, and I'm wondering uh, what compels you to veer off. What is eventually the breaking point? Do you just get bored with reading the same basic thing? The Spaminator, from November 1st through Halloween, I read nothing but horror. I do the Garb August thing. Other than that, I choose completely on a whim. Completely on a whim. Hmm. I'll be reading a lot of Victorian stuff next week. James Rucala, yes, MKV can get me to stray from my plans. Uh, prisoner of okay, all right. You mean stray from your plans, and you mean Prisoner of Zenda? I'm pretty sure not Prisoner of Zelda, but I think I skipped some, didn't I? I think I skipped. Oh yes, the chat jumped and I didn't even realize it. Here, let's go. I'll just do you again here. Uh, James Rucala, sheepishly feel like I may have sent a fact boy email or two. It's a natural thing. Don't beat yourself up. People do it. It used to be that I would get just a blatant fact boy email, and I would respond with an answer. And in my mind, I would say, okay, respond with a fact boy answer and pay attention. And if the next email they send is just another fact boy question, so in other words, I'm not actually present in this exchange, you're not interested in this person at all, then don't respond, or respond and point that out. And eventually, over the years, I just decided. I know it's awful callous, but usually now I just don't respond to factboy questions, because someone who's going to persistently ask factboy questions is not going to ask any other kind of question. You can't shame someone into wanting to be your friend. Obviously, that isn't going to work. So it is just elementally a dead end. So now I just tend to ignore it. If somebody does that, if there's lob a question saying, "Hi Steve, 18th century historians," just a question mark. Not even ask. Don't even bother to phrase it as a question. Just your Emirac. I'm just going to put in the data that I those I've gotten more and more comfortable just ignoring them. And I'm not saying that you should wrap a fact boy question in all sorts of falderall about hi, how are you, how's the weather, how's the bean. I want you to feel that falderall. If you don't, then don't bother. It's going to be obvious that you don't mean it. Aaron, my choice of which squeecore book I read next is dependent on which straight white man I'm angry at in the moment. I've read nothing but Ibram X. Kendi and Gretchen Felker Martin for a year. I wonder what this latest scandal, if it's going to have any effect on Kendi at all. I wonder if it's going to affect anything about his rapturous critical reception if he ever writes another book. Uh, I'm curious to know. I don't think it's going. I'm think it's completely siloed. I don't think that people are gonna. It's gonna have any effect on him at all. Uh, the Spaminator, from September 1st until Halloween. I meant to say. Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. D Temple 54. Where my whimsy takes me, Dorothy Sayers. Maximum Stenich. When is your friend Sam Sachs going to collect his writing? I want to read all of him, but I can't bring myself to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. Yes, the Wall Street Journal is not just fascism curious, the way the Washington Post now apparently is. They are in favor of fascism. They want to be the fascist journal for the coming Reich. Uh, Completely failing to understand that the coming Reich will banish literacy, so they won't need a journal. I agree with you completely. And I don't know when Sam's going to collect his work. I really don't. He's, to put it mildly, got a few things on his plate. And also, I know this is going to sound weird to say about someone who's writing a weekly column, but he's mighty damn lazy. So I don't know that he's ever going to do it. There's no market for such things, believe it or not. There is none at all, none whatsoever. No matter who you are, no how big your name is, it's going to be twisting arms to get a publisher to collect your book reviews and run them, unless you have a really good position on the progressive stack, which completely rules the publishing industry and will definitely determine whether or not you get a collected reviews published. And Sam isn't all that high on the progressive stack, so publishers are just explicitly going. They won't ask it because they know it's actionable, but they'll explicitly want to know, where are you on the progressive stack? Do you have an artificial limb? Did you lose it in a civil war? Did you lose it in a civil war that was incited by the United States? Okay, then no matter how boring or trivial your work is, we'll definitely publish it. Uh, he isn't. He doesn't have much in the way of progressive stack cred, so I don't know that anyone would do that for him. Grace's Gazette is back. If I'm in a reading slump, I'm more inclined to reach for nonfiction. I'm not sure exactly why, though. Red Comet by Heather Clark is my current pick. It seems decent so far. It is wonderful. Uh, Reviewed as such by yours truly. Although I'm distressed to learn from a number of different people that I am not blurbed on the paperback of that. Don't know what more I needed to do. Send bonbons to the publisher? I swear. Uh, Hannah's Books is here. Regarding what's next, I choose next book based on things that might be similar in some way, by the same author, about a specific topic, a general theme, a book that might be the absolute opposite. Okay, so dissimilar also works in, but definitely a thread from book to book, not a clean break. Hannah's Books. Booktube, however, and its theme months have made me quite often plan in advance. Well, we've got Victober coming up. And there are enough unread books on my shelves, literal or digital, the ones I'm most interested in keeping, that I'm usually choosing between whatever I actually have. So, not a lot of used book shopping or new book shopping. I will be going to the Brattle this week. I don't know why. I never know what I'm going to find there, but I never go away empty handed. So, that reading guy, I made it to a Stevestream, you mean? Yes, but this is going to be a short Stevestream. Uh, let's see here. Grace's Gazette. As to what influences my mood, there's so much. This year, I've been grief stricken more than I ever expected to be. I've oscillated between wanting books about grief and actively avoiding them. Yeah, it's tough to know. I've never seen myself the appeal of people who are in the grip of grief reading about grief. Afterwards, yes, but during, I've never understood that at all. Uh, there's also happier influences. If I'm planning a trip somewhere or curious about a place, I want to explore the literature. Yes. Uh, Jared Henderson. Forgot to mention, about half of my reading is now determined by videos that I want to make. If I'm going to make a video about Le Guin, I need to read a lot of her critics, a lot of her critics, etc. I wonder how many booktubers feel that way. I bet not many. Not that you're a booktuber. I wouldn't mean to smirch you, but I wonder if booktubers, how much of a role booktube plays in what they pick next. I wish I'd phrased that question. But then it's part of this question. I'm curious about anything at all that moves the levers to get you to read your next book. James Rucala, yes, Michael K. Vaughan can get me to stray from my plans too. Prisoner of Zelda, for example, you keep saying Zelda. Oh my God, you keep doing it. It's not Prisoner of Zelda, but I would prefer to read Prisoner of Zelda. Yes, it's that's the trio that I'm getting more often is me and Mike and also Randy. Uh, let's see here. Balin 321. I call myself an obsession reader. I read as widely as possible, and then I find something I like, and for the next 6 months, only read something related. That was once ordinary. I'm amazed that's not coming up more often here. That was once ordinary to do. Uh, that reading guy currently reading the Canticle for Leibowitz, and the Latin is tripping me up. Yeah, just have to blow right through it. Miller knew perfectly well that his readers weren't going to know it. You just have to blow right through it. That's all. Lindsay reads, I'm a mix of mood reading and planned reading. I select a pile of books I'd like to focus on, but don't hold myself strictly to it. I also love participating in BookTube monthly events. Okay, so you have a vague idea, but BookTube can affect that vague idea. That's very interesting. Duncan is here. Well, hello. Hello there, Steve. I've enjoyed a weekend of reading. How about you? Oh, 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 oh. My weekend of reading has been epic. It's been raining uh, the whole time, and it has been an epic weekend of reading. In fact, injuriously so, because it is drastically decreased writing, and that is not good. That is absolutely not good, and it's also not permissible. But it has happened. It has happened this weekend, where I've just wanted to just sink myself in reading, sunk myself in this thing. What a treasure trove! This is the big book of cyberpunk. But also, boy, oh boy, did I like this more than I thought I would. Oh man, I need to go through huge chunks of this again, take a lot of notes, and thanks to a very perceptive review in the New York Times Book Review today, I did a chunk of this again. Anne Enright's new book. The review in the Times today underscored something that was bothering me the first time I went through the book, and that I never really grappled with, which was the element of humor involved. And boy, oh boy, it's classic thing. Somebody says, uh, you're thinking of plate of shrimp, and then somebody says plate or shrimp or plate of shrimp. The minute the reviewer pointed it out, I was suddenly seeing it everywhere. So, and so much more than that, including, as I mentioned a little earlier, a new Desmond Seward. New to me, Monks and Wine, which I got for free in one of those aggregator sites. So the weekend reading has been going fantastic. I need to throttle it back and get a lot of writing done. The Spaminator. There aren't any genres I avoid. Find myself reading canonical classics most often. No matter the genre, I demand the book be enjoyable. If it doesn't connect with me by 1/4 mark, I'm done. Totally right. Totally. At least the first quarter of the book. That's sometimes generous, depending on the length of the book, but at least that. If it's not grabbing you by then, it's not your fault. It might be the fault of the time, might not necessarily be the fault of the book. It might be the fault of the time or the moment or your mood, but it's not your fault as a reader. So let it go. Just drop it. Uh, Lindsay reads outside of those books. I read books depending on what calls to me. Okay. What determines that? I want to know the mechanics involved here. Jenny Parks, most of my reading for the end of the year and most of next year will be attempting to finally finishing all the open series that I have with a few standalones scattered in, no new series allowed. But will you stick to that? What if in the hurly burly of October and November, somebody comes out with the first book in a new series that seems just unbeatable, that is perfect? Surely that is not a hard and fast rule. Jared Henderson says, my next email. Hi, Steve. I hope you find this finds you well. How is the bean, the weather, politics? What's the best history of comic books? How is your digestion and overall health? Yeah, but you're overdoing it. That's meant as a joke, but you're overdoing it. Most of the factoid questions don't go anywhere near that far. They say, hi, Steve. Love your channel. How's the bean? And then, the Ostrogoth? And I have stopped. It's been over a year now that I've forced myself to be what amounts to rude. I hate to be rude in email, but it feels rude to just simply ignore those things, just immediately put them in the trash. But I have learned in the course of a year that writing back and saying, "What about the Ostrogoths?" won't work. If a person doesn't see me as human, I cannot make them see me as human. They will either have to see that or they won't. But leading questions, needling questions, answering questions for 6 months straight, and then saying, "Oh, by the way, do you ever want to know how I am?" and get a shamefaced, embarrassed, fake response. Now that doesn't work. There's no future to it. The one way that I calm myself, the one way that I make myself feel a little better, is that unlike in the pre-internet days, getting answers to factoid questions is simple. Now you've got Google, you've got a million other things that you can do. So it's not like I'm leaving anyone bereft if I simply ignore a factoid question. Uh, J. Nicole, before book club, I would just pick something that interested me. Then, if I liked the author, I would read the author's available work or who inspired that particular author. Book club, you mean, is that a mistype? Do you mean booktube? Or are you talking about your own book club? Uh, Monet Doyle, the book I'm reading, All's Fair in Love and Chocolate, is wonderful. I will be picking up Sweeter Than Chocolate next. Right. Keeping up with a theme. That reading guy, I used to clinically plan out my reading for at least the next few months until I found it drained the joy out of my reading. Now I let whim choose my next read, but not completely whim. Whim is always guided by something. You're not a pantser. No one is a pure mood reader. No one is a pure whim reader. I feel certain of that. So I'm wondering what it is that tips things over. Uh, Gola Muad'Dib, hi Steve, how's your Sunday going? My Sunday is absolutely fine. It's been chilly and rainy here, a perfect day for reading. It would ordinarily make me feel a little guilty, but my little dog right now hates the idea of going out in the rain. She doesn't even like going out when the sidewalk is wet, even if it's not raining. So she's been perfectly happy to just sack out with me and read all day long. Jenny Parks, do we get a blob watch? Oh, that's not a bad idea at all, is it? Let's take a look. We're in the middle of a blob right now uh, here in Boston, but I think there's another one coming. I think there's another blob coming. Let's take a look. Maybe the remnants of Ophelia. No, this is Ophelia right now. Okay, well, we've got a lot of activity in the eastern half of the country. That's where we are right now. That's hitting Boston right now. This big mess right here, uh, and that looks like it has a while still to go. But then you've got these other systems. Here, let's give these satellites time to put them on the map. We saw them the first time. There we go. So we got this thing here and this thing here. Either one could. No, it looks like they're trending in a different direction. So it'd be this. It'd be this right here. Uh, that might hug the coast and do something else. I think Boston is predicted long term to get more moisture at the end of this coming week, but this is all going to clear out tomorrow. So nothing big on the Blob Watch horizon. The Spaminator, I don't typically pay attention to social media reviews, including Goodreads. I recently read The Only Good Indians, but one half of my fellow horror fanatics hated it. I thought it fantastic. Uh, I didn't know that the ratio was that bad for that book. You mean the Only Good Indian, right? I didn't know the ratio was 50-50. I thought most people liked it. James Rucala, is the STD, whoop, where did you go? Where did you go? Oh my God. Is the STD book club continuing? I hadn't really thought about it. I want it to continue, but I think it's too late probably for me to to set up anything for October. Maybe it's not. Maybe I have time for October, depending on the book that I pick. Maybe I'll do that. I'll think about it tonight. I haven't really thought about it at all. That reading guide, choosing whim has its own problems, though. I find myself interested by so many books. I'm tempted to start 10 books at one time. I cut that urge down to one physical book and one ebook at a time. But even there, you have to choose. How do you choose? Oliver Anderson, I'm reading The War with Hannibal as research for my Woodhouse pastiche set in the Alps. Much to my shock, Hannibal crossed into Italy in book one. Still enjoying it regardless. Yes, yes. There's a lot more to enjoy in that book than simply crossing the Alps. View from the bar is here. Steve, Marie, and I just found that if we howl for a few seconds, our pit bull starts howling too. But his howl is preceded by a couple of whimpers. Is he distressed or singing along? Marie, Pitbull, we need to talk. I think. Typically speaking, I'd have to see the situation, but typically speaking, the preliminary whimpers ahead of time is the dog expressing confusion because you don't usually do that, and they're worried if they should be alarmed. And then instinct takes over because if people are howling in unison, most dogs are going to want to join the fun. I can't get Frida to do it at all, but most dogs, especially the dumber kind of dogs, the adorable dumber kinds of dogs, they'll eventually just join in. But I would have to hear the whimpers to know. Uh, Ewan Sinclair, after reading a few books in a similar style, I change direction before I get bored, potentially bored anyway. Okay. All right. So which is it? So you're saying you don't always change once you get bored. You sometimes change while you're still interested in order to forestall boredom. So what makes that decision? Can you feel it coming? I don't know how that would work. He continues, I used to gorge on a particular writer if I really love their work, but now I space them out between others. The gorging on particular writers or particular kinds of readings was the de facto answer to this question forever. Now I'm not getting it at all. That's wonderful. That's interesting. Grace's Gazette. I also do try to keep up my other languages, French and German, by reading short stories and nonfiction in said languages. I'm a sucker for German poetry, Paul Celan especially. Upkeeping the languages by use. Gola Muad'Dib, my copy of the complete Chronicles of Conan arrived in the mail today. Well, you've still got a week to enjoy it for Sumerian September, and you can technically read it even if it's not Sumerian September. View from the bar. I was delighted to see Jill Lepore eviscerated Isaacson's new book as vehemently and from as many angles as you did. Did we read the same review, Boychik? Did we read this review? Seemed to me a lot more gentle than an evisceration. Maybe I need to read it again. Uh, Aaron, I recently bought a copy of Mirror Shades. You showing off that cyberpunk book makes me want to read it now. It is pretty good. It is pretty good. I said when I opened it that it didn't seem like it was fashioned out of hate for me. Hate for me by name. Hate for me specifically. Hate for white men. I looked at the table of contents and I thought, okay, I don't recognize a lot of these names, but I'm not sure that I would. And a lot of names that wouldn't be on here if it were crafted out of hatred are on here. So this was probably done with a mind towards being a very good anthology. But that doesn't stop me from worrying when I start to weigh into the stories themselves. And so far, it has been wonderful. Uh, let's see here. Randy Ray. Wait, am I late? You are indeed late. We are wrapping up very soon. Grace's Gazette. Some of the better journalism comes from French news outlets in Quebec. So French articles in Canada are never hard to find. Jenny is saying hi to Randy. Randy's saying hi to me and to everyone. Maximus Stedich. Lately, I've been feeling very poorly read in contemporary fiction. So I've been drilling that lately. I'm loving the Patrick Melrose novels, or otherwise, I'm a literary tourist. Well, you certainly picked good ones to start with. Grandma Joe, hello, Steve. I've noticed since I've retired how much more nonfiction I read. It's morning here and still in bed with the four dogs. We'll give them a smooch for you. Please do. Please do. Once upon a time, forever and ever, that was my life. The idea of having only one dog. I've only done it once before. One time in my life before have I had only one dog for any significant length of time. Now with Frida, it's been 6 years of one dog only. Once upon a time, that was my life. Where even if I fell asleep, I would wake up and the bed would be covered in beagles. They would be everywhere. There was always one who wanted to be right up next to my face, resting under my chin. There would always be one who didn't want to be anywhere near me, wanted to be down at the end of the bed. They'd be everywhere, just everywhere. Some on top of each other, and that was my reality forever and ever. It's not anymore. Not anymore. Frida is so gentle. Uh, Jenny Parks, the dumbest thing I ever did was read a Monster Calls a couple of weeks after my mom passed with cancer. Bawled my eyes out on the bus and got stared at. Yeah, that'd be a triggering book for a circumstance like that, I would imagine. View from the Bar, Jill Lepore's new collection has garnered some comparisons to Vidal's United States. What say you? I'm on a kick with her work. Uh, you could compare it to United States. Certainly, they are bare bones the kind of same thing. Is that good? Is that good enough? You could certainly compare it to United States. They are the same thing. They are a collection of periodical deadline prose. There, that ought to do it. Jay Nicole, I am a member of an online book club that focuses on the classics. Maximus Stedich, Lepore is just great. You should review the new collection, Alex. Well, I know an outlet that would gladly take anything. That I was very tempted. The Brattle has a copy of her big fat book on American history. The Brattle has, for some reason, a German hardcover, and it's so much better looking than the American hardcover of that book was very boring to look at. The German hardcover is beautiful. Uh, let's see here. Randy Ray, we're supposed to get a little thunderstorm action here tonight too. Yeah, there was originally a brief idea that some of this rain would be accompanied by thunderstorms, but there's no chance of it now. Come here, come here, Frida. Come on, come on. You can do it. Come on, there you go. Really need to get her a step stool. Uh, let's see here. That reading guy. It is certainly not too late to pick a book for the STD book club. Okay, well, I will think about that tonight. I have a whole shelf of candidates. I'll think about that tonight. Tori reads. I was thinking of you recently because my cousin hired a dog expert to deal with her rowdy puppy. He instructed her to loudly shush the dog, and it seems so silly to me. I had to mention it to you. It is silly and also cruel. They're here for an eye blink of time. An eye blink of time. In only 10 years, that puppy will be old. It is crazy to be so vicious, so dictatorial, especially to puppies. Don't do anything but love puppies and clean up after them. Don't do anything but do that. Don't even try to train them. Don't do anything to puppies until they're a good 6 months old. You'll know. You'll start to feel it. You should wait for the teeth to come out, and you should wait for there to be, that sort of squishy, milky feeling to puppy muscles, the kind of puppy breath. All of that will go away. It's the equivalent of the voice dropping and the facial hair popping out and whatnot on in humans. All of those qualities will go away. It's when those qualities start to go away that you start to impose any kind of structure or instruction or rules on a puppy. Otherwise, the only precautions you should take with a little puppy is to make sure that the puppy doesn't hurt himself. That's all. No discipline, no yelling, no nothing at all. Just love, just complete love. That's the coin that you will use when it comes time to train the animal. If you're going to train the animal, you're going to want that. But telling a puppy shush, not only was your cousin's dog expert wrong about that, but you should talk to your cousin and tell your cousin not to do it. No matter what the dog expert cost, don't do that. Don't discipline a puppy. It is not being received the way you think it is. And the ways that it's being received are doing a lot to do a mental number on the dog. Most of the problems that you will encounter with that dog when that dog is a year old will come from the fact that it had no idea where its love was coming from and when it was a puppy and that's all it knew. So don't do that. And don't let her do that. Ingrid Fitz, hi Steve. I read in themes sometimes. I'll read a few books about outdoor adventures, westerns, books in translation, etc. I'll stop a theme when I feel like it. But what determines when you feel like it? If you're enjoying a theme, why would you stop? Uh, Tori reads, my cousin now runs around her house pointing her finger and shushing the dog for everything. It's ridiculous. You should tell her to stop. She is doing damage to the dog, and the dog only wants to be loved and is only here for an eye blink of time. There is nothing that a puppy can do that is worth disciplining. They mess on the floor. They eat things you wish they wouldn't eat. You'll be laughing happily about that in 10 years. All of it. It is absolutely wrong to discipline a puppy. They don't understand what's going on anyway. So it's not like you're going to do any good. You're not building a foundation of any kind. They don't understand what's going on anyway. All they want is to be loved. Uh, the discipline comes later. It's not that long to wait. If you've got a puppy, then by Valentine's Day, you will be teaching that puppy to do and not do some things. But if you're already an unpredictable tyrant of an enemy, your dog is going to be fearing you by that point. It is. It's ridiculous. It's also bad. You should exercise whatever control you can to get it to stop happening. This is the dog's life. This is the dog's only life. But anyway, it's a guaranteed to get me off track here. That reading guy, how I choose my next read. Usually what calls for me from my bookshelves, or from outside influence such as BookTube, or in-depth conversation with friends. Okay, but what is the call? I'm sure that you have long, in-depth conversation with friends that don't result in any call to a book. So what happens? What is the difference between the ones that do? Randy Ray, I get a lot of ideas about what to read next from YouTube. I just finished This Is the by Mary Gaitskill this morning, which was recommended by Priscilla at the Evening Reader. Randy Ray and Uncommon Reader is one that Steve recommended. That was really great. Definitely a highlight of my reading year so far. Yes, it is terrific. Up, down, hello, Steve. I'm a bit stoned. Well, it's not going to make you interesting conversation. View from the bar. Along with the starter kits, I would love it if you did a list of cultural figures with whom a reader ought to get familiar. Steve's cultural amnesia. Oh my God. Are you referring to my fellow critic? There isn't a week goes by when I don't miss him. Tori reads, yes, I have tried my best to talk to her about shushing. It is making the situation worse. Now the dog acts out against her. I want to take the dog home. I don't know the ins and outs of the situation here, but if this person is intent on abusing this dog, you should see what you can do about rescuing the dog. Obviously, an owner who is shushing a dog all day long is not getting any joy out of having that dog. So that branch might be weak. You might be able to effect a rescue. That's what this puppy needs. This puppy needs a rescue, which I'm sure your cousin would say nothing could be further from the truth. I've gone to a lot of trouble to give this dog a home. This dog does not need to be rescued. Sounds to me like the dog does. And The point I don't want to, again, I don't know the situation, but the point that I have made on this channel and to friends in person many times forever has been, if a dog needs saving, you save it. You don't say, here are the 10 factors that make that complicated. You don't say, well, I'll have a better window next week. If a dog needs saving, you save it when it needs saving. That is the ultimate karma stopper if you don't. I've told friends to pull over in driving rainstorm on a highway to rescue, to save someone. And my Basset Hound Lucy needed saving, running around in traffic. You cannot say in when you see it, you cannot say it's not my responsibility. Once you're aware of it, it is to do something. But anyway, anyway, Balin 3 2. What? Wait, where'd you go? We're not going to keep this up forever. Balin 3 2 1. I prefer reading one topic or another obsessively. When I read widely, I feel unmoored. Looking at Amazon bestsellers and not knowing what to read, I tend to just return to nonfiction. Then, so obsessively, you mean if you read about something that you find interesting, you'll keep reading about that something. A lot of readers in the past have found that to be a wonderful sanctuary, an anchor in a storm of all these infinite reading possibilities. Is that I know I like reading about the Battle of Agincourt or the history of printmaking. I know I like reading about this subject. And there's so many other books out there, and I don't have any idea what they are or whether or not they're any good. So I'll just stick with this subject. Nothing wrong with that at all. Especially if you don't want the feeling of being unmoored can be unpleasant, so you might not want that. Jenny Parks, I love the puppy smell. I'm too weak to train dogs. All I want to do is play, regardless of being used as a chew toy. Well, when they're little, when they're tiny little puppies, they're going to use you as a chew toy anyway. They're not going to keep doing it. You're almost certainly not going to need to train an older dog once that the puppy elements go away. The puppy smell will go away. Puppy teeth will go away. The puppy squishiness will go away. Muscle tone will start to happen. And those are the things that you can look for. You're human, so you don't have a sense of smell. The sense of smell is absolutely determinative. You'll know almost to the hour when that is no longer true. And once that stuff is no longer true, well, then the dog can remember associations. The dog is already, if you're doing things right, the dog already has an enormous investment in keeping the open channel of affection going between the two of you. They care more about that than they do about food or water or anything. And if you only love a puppy for the whole of the beginning of his life, that's all they're going to know. They're going to want to keep that going. After a while, once they are sentient, once they're not babies anymore, once they're able to make sense of what you want and don't want in their environment, then you sit back and determine, okay, what kinds of things are they getting on their own? Until those puppy things go away, you're not going to be taking the puppy out for regular walks. Once those puppy things do go away, you are going to be taking the puppy out for regular walks. It's not going to be long from taking those regular walks before the puppy actively starts to prefer going to the bathroom outside and won't go inside. In a normal, well adjusted dog, that will be something you barely need to teach at all. I know impatient humans want that to be, like clockwork from week 3. But if you have a little patience, you probably won't have to train your dog to do that at all. They will start to want to do that. After all, in male and female, the peeing especially is for use. It's not just to relieve your bladder, it's to mark things. And, For the first few months, for the first couple of months, the dog is not going to be aware of training anyway. He's going to chew on you anyway. Why not do it? Why not just let it happen and love? Just bombard with love. But anyway, anyway, let's see here. Randy Ray, Brock, my dog, and I had a great nap this morning. I always have to be the big spoon when we nap. Yes, I remember what that feeling was like. Uh, when when sometimes when I don't nap, of course, but sometimes when I'm really relaxed up on the bed in the little book room, when Frida's, at the bottom of the bed or she's at my knees or whatever, I will I will look at her and I will say, "Baby, why don't you come up here so I can just hug you nice and tight and sweet?" And the look on her face is, "What are you nuts?" It's only when she's really sleepy that she forgets that she's all big and she's a big girl and doesn't need to be hugged by daddy. And once she's really sleepy, then all of a sudden she is all the way over here like this. But not ordinarily, no. That's also is a change. Most of the dogs that I've had loved to cuddle. Tori reads, you raise a great point about fear. I don't understand it. Her and her husband believe the dog should fear them to stay in line. some weird alpha thing. Anyway, sorry for the derailment. Her and her husband think that a little puppy should stay in line, should be afraid and stay in line. And that's his whole dog's life. That's his whole life. That the one and only life that he gets. All the possibility that he could have, all the joys that he could have. This is the one life he gets, and he is a miserable slave. And unless you do something about it, he will stay that way. Just a fearful, miserable slave. Are they going to pay attention to this dog when he's 2? Is he gonna get any kind of mental stimulation when he's 2? Is he gonna get any kind of excess love when he's 2 if he's being treated this way as a puppy? Is he, baby? Mhm. You got lots of love when you were a puppy, didn't you? Even though she routinely went into the little crawl space behind the couch and got stuck there. I lost track of how many times I was on all fours, dragging her by her hind legs out of there. Of course, she was a fluff ball. She would be covered in dust. I lost track of how many times that happened. And there were days, afternoons, where she would move from one part of the living room to the other, peeing. So, I'm going to pee a little piddle here. I'm going to go 10 feet right now, same time, and pee a little piddle there. And I used to just stand there with a roll of paper towels, just saying, all right, when is this going to stop? You're not infinite. You're not a limited amount of holding tanks here. And once the puppy stuff went away, she stopped wanting to do that. Just nothing could make her go in the house now. I didn't have to do a thing. I didn't have to train her in any way to do that. That was completely natural to her. Ah, that is a derailment, Tori reads. Not your fault, but you should do something about it. Uh, Randy Ray, sorry, it was this pleasure. This is pleasure, not this is the. I figured there was something missing there. That reading guy, the call is usually when I'm ignorant about a topic that I want to learn more about, or a novel I've been wanting to read for a long time. Uh, let's see here. Martin S. I had a brief moment where I really wanted to read Jane Eyre. I captured the moment and followed it with Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey. Ended up enjoying them all greatly. Well, that is a theme. Frida, Frida, come here, baby. Come on. Just stay here, little girl. You don't want to be down there. There you go. There you go. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? Ewan Sinclair, because I used to gorge on a particular writer or genre at a point where I would get bored or overfamiliar, I make sure to mix it up now and have a richer reading experience. Balin 321, the worst animal cruelty to a pet I saw was the case of a parent of a friend in middle school who had a mastiff that he used to whip when the dog disobeyed him. Looked malnourished. Very sad. Yeah, it's sad. It's infuriating the way people do this, the way some people take out sick power fantasies on dogs. That reading guy, I've tried to help dogs I see running around outside, but all of them except one growled at me and ran away. Yeah, that can be a problem for people who aren't me. That was exactly what I did when I traveled. My boys and I, I would go to wherever dogs were gathered. Well, if I were on foot, as I often was, it'd be some sort of field or dump outside of town, and I would gather them to me. That was my standard rule with them was you for the time that I am here, you can have the life you should have had. No scrounging for food. You can eat as much as you want. The coin to enter the realm here, the balance that you have to do is that I'm going to bathe you. And most of the dogs that I did that to had never been bathed before, and I weren't sure if they would like it. But I can't ask any kind of a human host to let a bunch of filthy dogs into their home. So you have to bathe first, a thorough bathing, and you also have to bend the knee uh, to the beagle. There was one particular beagle that I had in charge of all my other beagles at the time, for most of that time, for a huge amount of that time, 2 decades. And he called the shots so that I didn't have to all the time. And I might, if I find you and you've got some sort of quasi pack structure, maybe you're the strongest dog in that pack structure, you have to bend the knee to him, to my old man. You have to bend the knee to him and to me, of course, but that goes without saying. You have to bend the knee to him so that I know he knows what you're doing. And that's not going to be. He's not going to raise his voice to you. He's not going to even bare a tooth to you. His authority is as much natural to him as it is to me by this point. So you do those two things. You play ball in my pack structure, and you let me bathe you, and you can have sleeping in comfort, in warmth, on blankets with me, with me. You can have all the food and water that you want without having to fight for it or worry about it. I will bring you back to where you were when it's all over. I can't take you with me, but I can give you that for a little while. Uh, uh, Never got growled at many times, I must say. Uptown, I mainly read nonfiction. I tend to read a few books on a single topic, then switch to something completely different. Nonfiction is great for that. I don't know, you guess it. That's why nonfiction is a comfort zone for me. I just expand the list of interesting topics. This year it was going from bugs to the history of religion. I'm trying to get into the spooky classics now. Well, I'm loving all the love for nonfiction here. Balin321. Sometimes I envy you dog lovers. You can have many dogs. I serve only one feline master. Well, at the moment, I have only one dog. Uh, I don't know how she would react to having another dog. I don't know. It's never cropped up. Uh, Jenny Parks, my sister has a 3-month-old Frenchie who loves to chew on my nose. I want to steal him. I've never understood why people hate it. Yeah, it's not going to last. I don't get it at all myself. I mean, in one of Frida's first videos on this channel, she is biting my nose, and I didn't mind it at all. It's not going to last. Balin321, what is your view on the bully XXL debate in the UK? I'm appalled by it, of course. Appalled especially by some public intellectuals I thought I knew, some that I thought I respected, saying that these dogs are naturally violent. That is absolutely not true. Nothing is naturally violent. Nothing. Even wasps aren't naturally violent. Nothing is. Uh, that it looks like it's gaining traction. That stupid idea. It looks like that idea is gaining traction, but it's wrong. So if you read that anywhere, it's wrong. Nothing, no dog breed is naturally violent. Uh, Jared Henderson, if we're struggling to decide what to read, we can always use tarot cards, star charts, and Ouija boards. What do you think, Steve? You could ask Steve. Provided it's not a fact boy question, you could ask me. Tori reads, thank you for the advice, Steve. It is greatly appreciated. I'm going to intervene. You are morally obligated to. I don't mean to be, Debbie Downer here, and I don't mean to be uh, lecturing, but you are morally obligated. That's the point that I was trying to make. If you see it, you have to do something. You don't have to adopt the dog yourself, but you have to do something. Otherwise, you are the kind of person who sees something like that and doesn't do anything. You don't want to be that kind of person. You definitely don't want to be that kind of person. So don't be. Act. There's an innocent on the line. A complete innocent is on the line. Uh, anyway, I read mostly nonfiction as well. Currently reading Strangers in Their Own Land. It's great. Wow, all this love for nonfiction. So you people are all geared up, I hope, for Olive's event for Nonfiction November, one of the great BookTube events. I hope you're all geared up for it. That's going to be a lot of fun. Jenny Parks, I need to work on my nonfiction reading, but fiction is more fun. Fiction is not more fun, Missy. It means you're picking the wrong nonfiction. All the nonfiction fans in the chat here will agree with me. If you think that fiction is more fun, you are picking the wrong nonfiction. And I can help with that. Maximus Stedich, are humans naturally violent? Yes, humans are. But humans are a defective species. They're defective clade. The gigantic leaps, I know nature doesn't make leaps, no saltation, but still, the gigantic evolutionary leaps that the human brain took, the human forebrain took in comparatively eye blinks of time, evolutionarily speaking, they were amazing, and they gave us a brain that is far, far more advanced than it needs to be for effective communication. But they also caused a concurrent suite of genetic defects. Humans are inherently not just violent, but genocidal. Little children, without any instruction from older children or from adults, little children will see a bug and kill it. They don't even hesitate. And when they do, when they kill it, a bug or a toad or a frog, they then want to kill every single bug or toad or frog. That is weird. That exists nowhere else in the animal kingdom. No other animal species has that at all, that instinct to genocide. And I don't think it's any coincidence that humans feel that, and there are no other species of humans except this one that are left alive. And among the ranks of Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens have done their best to kill other Homo sapiens, but no other species of humans survives. There were dozens of them at the same time as there were humans. They're all gone. And it's curiously enough, almost all of their fossilized skulls have fractures. Anyway, let's see here. That reading guide. What will be your next chapter by chapter read along? I don't know. I need to decide on that too. Boy, that and the Steve Tiberius Donahue Book Club and the read aloud, all of these things. I really need to decide this. I've lost myself in reading for the whole weekend. I need to not do that. There are other things I need to think about. Uh, Balin321, I don't know, Steve. How about those animals that fight like bears and lions? A lion fights with another lion for command of a pride, for possession of a fertile female, maybe for a little bit of territory or over a kill. But when that lion has achieved his goal, he does not want all of the lions dead at all. Even a lion that fights with hyenas, they don't want all hyenas dead. Uh, anyway, you and Sinclair, I read mostly fiction, but I'm branching out to nonfiction. The Escape Artist by Jonathan Friedland was very gripping. Lots of nonfiction. Lots of nonfiction is gripping. Many wonders await you. Balin321, how about chimpanzee genocides? There is no such thing. There are chimpanzee wars, skirmishes, but no genocides at all. No other animal species even thinks about it. Only humans do. Unless maybe ants. Ants may have something similar. I don't think so, but maybe. Uh, Joanna Burgess, hello, Steve. I love to watch you and BookTube. Oh, thank you very much. Isn't that nice? I love all the book recommendations, and usually I build a TBR from them. But recently I found it was paralyzing my reading. It took the fun. No, my channel doesn't take the fun out of reading at all. Not a chance. You must be talking about other parts of BookTube. You must be. Even my worst enemies would not say that my channel saps the fun out of reading. No way. No way. I think that one of the common attributes to very disparate channels on BookTube that have really enthusiastic fans is that they are enthusiastic channels. Uh, let's see here. Tori reads, nonfiction is immensely fun. Number of books and ideas, Massey's Dreadnought, for example, led me to is one of the most fun times. Oh, Massey's Dreadnought will take you to a dozen books at least. At least. Because he has the gift of making everything he touches on in that huge book interesting. So you want to read more about it. Even Austrian finance ministers, you suddenly want to know more about them. Uh, Balin321, I was a very violent kid. I understand what you say. I used to collect bugs and see how long they lasted without food or water. I'm still a bit ashamed of it. Well, the fact that you're a bit ashamed of it is good. That means that you've developed morals since then. But the fact that you were an unremitting violent sadist when you were a kid and had not been made that way by anyone proves my point. People always argue with me about this. And that proves my point. People always say, oh, you know how cruel kids can be. No, I don't know that. I don't know that at all about any other species. I know that plenty about humans, and I know that they're born that way. Which is why I always say the thing that I say that people just hate when I always say, if some god presented me with a big red button that would instantly annihilate every human on earth, including the people I know and love, but all the other 10 billion as well, and leave everything else untouched, I would do it. I would press the button without hesitation, without any hesitation at all. I'd pay someone to press it for me if I couldn't get to it myself. Uh, but there is no such button. So, Richardson reads, are you still on YouTube? Yes, I am. You should join in the fun. We could do a live stream together. Imagine the comments field we'd get there. And I'm not a newbie to this anymore, like I was last time we did live streams. We could do one together. You could come on this channel. We could do a live stream together, and I could just handle the comments myself. Uh, Tori reads, a few months ago, you mentioned you would do a video on how to read a book and why. Might you still be interested? I certainly am. I thought about it, but then I thought, wouldn't that be a little insulting? I mean, you're all avid readers. Wouldn't it be a little insulting for me to make a video like that? Who would it be for? A View from the Bar. I have weirdly specific interest in reading a historical book about two monumental personalities meeting along the lines of Churchill and Roosevelt first meeting. Any suggestions? First thing that comes to mind is Edmund Wilson's book, The Shock of Recognition, which is a whole series, a whole sequence of things like that. That's the whole point of the book. So that definitely would work. There's also just recently there was I think was it 2 or 3 years ago there were two books on Dennis Diderot. And one of them, it wasn't Diderot, what was it? Diderot and the Art of Rational Thinking or something like that. My God, I'm blanking, and I reviewed both of them. The other of the two, one of them was a more or less straight up biography, but the other was about his many meetings with Catherine the Great, and that's wonderful too. Those meetings, the story of those meetings is wonderful. Uh, Maxim Stedish, speaking of nonfiction, do you prefer Glenn David Gould's memoir to either of his novels? No, no, his novels are amazingly good. No, I know what I think I know what he was trying to do with the memoir, but if it's his memoir that I'm remembering correctly, but the novels are incredible, just incredible. So no, I don't prefer anything else that he's written to them. Omnipotent Poobah, I may be slow in noticing, but haven't you swapped Superman for Holbein in your backdrop? Should we read anything into this? I'm not sure your sainted Ma would approve of his anti-Catholicism. I recently have done a lot of rearranging things here. It's been a lot of topography rearranging, a lot of moving things around, and I found that when I was doing that, I suddenly wanted to move around paintings. So this is in a different place, but a lot of other things are too. A lot of other things. But it was a lot of fun. That was a fun afternoon with a hammer and reassuring Frida that I was not gonna, nothing's going on here. We're not leaving. Balin 321, quite the opposite. I was in a reading slump before I discovered your channel. I've never read more since. Yeah, I have to feel that the comment was about other, maybe other channels, because you cannot say that about my channel. No way. You can say a lot about my channel, but you can't say that. That reading guy who's going to be the next victim of Bro Watch? It's been a while, more than a year. There is a candidate. It's been on my mind for a couple of months now. The problem is I like the guy. So what do you do? What do you do if you're going to do Bro Watch about somebody you like? That's it's so much easier to be savage when you don't know the person and you dislike what they're doing. Uh, but anyway, Tori reads, yes, please, a live stream with Mark, perhaps another dueling top 10 series. How wonderful that would be. Mark getting on here to do a stream would be great. Yeah, it's just the problem of coordinating things with people who have schedules. Jenny Parks, anytime I'm in a slump or get lazy, I just imagine you staring at me and reminding me I'll be dead in 5 minutes. And I start reading again. Yes, you will be. And also writing. You keep in mind, you're doing NaNoWriMo with me, which means you should be thinking about NaNoWriMo. Had a thought about NaNoWriMo today myself, but I'm going to save it for another Steve stream. I think I might know at least the beginning of what I want to do. Richardson reads Michael Dobbs' Churchill novels. Oh, I don't know what that's in reference to. Up, down, do you like the Upanishads? Not particularly, no. Does anybody? The Spaminator, I continue to be violent individual. Just last night, I poked a few eyes and dropped a sweet leg drop to end an unfortunate opponent's an unfortunate opponent's nether regions. Well, I did that too. I have guests over here. Martin S. The Lyle Wren went extinct because of a single cat named Tibbles. Cats are genocidal like humans. No, they aren't. No, they aren't. Tibbles wasn't thinking about the wrens. Tibbles was just opportunistic. Tibbles would have been perfectly happy if there were no wrens. Would have been perfectly happy to hunt something else. That reading guy, how many books? Oh, I just offended cats. Oh, God. That reading guy, how many books have you culled during your rearranging? A couple of thousand. A couple thousand more to go. I have not cut to the bone. Aaron, what would you say is the best cyberpunk novel and the best cyberpunk short story? Uh, I know this is gonna date me, but best cyberpunk novel I think is Neuromancer by William Gibson. If by best you mean not only the cyberpunk elements, but how beautifully it's written, which I don't want to separate them from one from the other. And I think I would give best cyberpunk short story to uh, Gibson as well. I mean, this book includes The Girl Who Was Plugged In by James Tiptree, and that is a terrific story. But I don't know. I might give it to Johnny Mnemonic by William Gibson. Uh, let's see here. Aaron, next Bro Watch, Jared Henderson. Oh my God, wouldn't that be something? No, no, it can't be Jared because in addition to the fact that I wouldn't know what to do, I wouldn't know how to do a Bro Watch about somebody that I like. I also it would totally change the nature of a Bro Watch video if I knew that the recipient was enjoying every minute of it, and I know that he would. As savage as I could be, I know that he'd be laughing his ass off the whole time. So that wouldn't work. That would be just too weird to do. Balin 321, would you say humans are the only species that enjoy violence? Yes. I am from a military family. Some volunteered for certain units. Don't ask during World War II. Reading their diaries, they seem to like war. Yeah, humans are defective. They are a defective, violent, genocidal species. They can be wonderful individually, but uh, uh, the Spaminator, I'm telling my cats you defended them. No, please don't. I just realized belatedly that I was defending cats. 321, telling Lord Adonis that you defend. No, don't tell your cats that I defended them. I hate them. They're spawns of Satan. Jenny Park, Steve defended cats. The world is no. I'm not. I wasn't. I was only saying they aren't. They aren't genocidal. That's all. Oh my God, what have I done? That reading guy, you cull books all the time, and yet you still wonder how you got rid of that one book you really liked. I know. I know. I always say that. I don't know why I got rid of it when I not only cull books, but I give them away like crazy. I mail books out all the time. Still, Carolyn Nixon, you defended cats. You now have no faults. No, I didn't. I wasn't defending. No, Jared Henderson. I've been waiting to be featured on Bro Watch for nearly a year now. I'd be gleeful. I know you would, and that would ruin it. That would ruin it. I want to destroy the person. I want them to shutter their channel. Uh, Aaron says, I noticed the book does not include Bruce Sterling's Mirror Shades. That's a great story. Yeah, I was when I was diving into this thing and reading chunks of it, I was kept going back to the table of contents and realizing a lot of things that aren't in there. And I'm no expert on cyberpunk, but there were uh, Mirror Shades is a story by Bruce Sterling that even I know. There must have been a reason, but I'm having a hard time with it. I'm going to need to sort it all out if I write about the thing. But I'm not going to criticize the choices that are made. I don't know. With all big books, I always wish they were longer. I mean, the big book series. I always wish they were bigger. Uh, let's see here. Randy Ray, I'm thinking about reinventing myself as a bro tuber, so you might have lots of material soon. Grandma Joe, the dogs are getting restless. Off for a run in the hills. Goodbye, everyone. Oh, that sounds like fun. Can't do anything like that this last day. Frida will not go out tramping in the rain. She will barely go to the hedge in the rain. It's been making me think about the couple of dogs I've had in my life who did like going out in the rain. The worse, the better. I had a couple of beagles, even from their own littermates. Their littermates were not at all interested in doing that. But every once in a while, I would have a boy who was and who wanted to go out when the wind was driving cold sideways, when it was blowing out of a dark gray sky. And I'm telling you, there is beauty in the woods or along a rocky ridge in such weather. There is. It's. I might even say that I miss it. I don't have it now. I'm not going to have it for 10 years, but I might even say that I miss it. Uh, Balin 321, would you have volunteered for the army during World War II had you lived then? Uh, it would depend on how much I knew. Uh, I wouldn't have volunteered just because, they did Pearl Harbor or something like that. It would depend on how much I knew. Uh, but that's a tricky question. I would certainly have gone if I was drafted. I don't know if I'd have volunteered. Uh, Maximus Stedich, I noticed that the big book of cyberpunk includes actress musician Janelle Monáe. Is she any good? Not that I've ever read, but who knows? I haven't read everything by her by a long shot. That reading guy, what will you be reading tonight? Well, I'm going to be reading Monks and Wine by Desmond Stewart. I just found this. This was just offered to me for free on one of those your daily ebook deal things. I signed up for a bunch of those things. I keep making a mental note to find more of those services. There must be more than what I have. Uh, I've added probably 200 books to my Kindle since I did that. I add something every day, a couple of titles every day. I figure they're free, and if they don't last for long, well, easy come, easy go. I might like them, so I'll definitely be reading Desmond Stewart, and then the temptation is really going to be strong to sink into these things. What I want to do is exercise complete self control with these Marvel Comics Penguin classics by reading only the text. These things have new introductions, new forwards, new bridging material. I want to read the text. I do not need to reread the comics. I do not need to do that. But I might do it. Like for instance, this X-Men volume, I looked right away at one of the Neil Adams artwork stories at the end about the Sentinels. That I had never realized until this moment that Quicksilver, the Scarlet Witch, and the Toad are captured by the Sentinels. and they are shackled and they are in captivity when the Beast, Hank McCoy, Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, and Cyclops find them and figure the way to confuse the Sentinels will be if we swap places, which means that these teenagers had to strip and put on each other's costumes. And how does Cyclops do that? How does he strip and put on someone else's costume if he can't open his eyes without his visor on? How does he manage? Are people just positioning him where he needs to go? Anyway, anyway, um, let's. Oh my God, the chat. Oh, here we go. Jenny Parks is responding to Balin 321. Hannah's books. Word will be out tomorrow, so all the cats in the neighborhood will start adoringly following me now. I have some feral cats in this neighborhood. Didn't know. I didn't have firsthand confirmation of that until just recently, but there are feral cats that live in the woods all around here. That reading guy. Next time you do a systematic reread of an author, you should take us along. That's an idea. That's a good idea. Richard Reed saying hi to Hannah. Jared Henderson, did you read that James Tiptree biography? Well, we're an hour and 25 minutes in, and we got to have you read question. I plan to read it next month. That biographer was also asked by Le Guin to write her biography, though Le Guin wanted it to be written after she died. Have I read the James Tiptree biography? That reading guide. By the way, your last mandatory reread was in 2019 with Darwin's Origin of Species. That's a mighty long time. Just saying, a mandatory reread, a mandatory read along. That's not a bad idea. Except I'm late. The mandatory read along, something of the stature of Pride and Prejudice or Origin of Species, would be Hamlet by Shakespeare. And I'm a little late. It's Shakespeare, but we want the whole month, and I'm a little late getting to that. The Spaminator. Uh, my favorite outdoor memories were in weather most normal people would consider ugly. Me too. Well, and if Mark is still here in the chat, I'm sure that he also has some prized memories of being 5 days away from land in any direction on the compass in the North Atlantic in a storm. It's hell when you're doing it, but oh boy, is it wonderful to remember. I've done that myself many, many times. Uh, Aaron, you would think the current commissars of SF Publishing would love Mirror Shade's theme in intertemporal colonialism. I don't get a lot of a feeling of the commissars being involved here, but I'm not finished with this book, not by any means, so it might crop up. Balin321 is responding to Hannah's books. That reading guide, time to end the stream after a have you read question. I know. We had the have you read question just sort of, it was just a power drill to the knees. Just all the wind has gone out of my. We had to end this anyway. Let's end at 7. But all the wind has gone out of my sails anyway to get a have you read question when I wasn't even expecting it. It came from the worst quarter in the world. Have you read that biography of James Tiptree? Is there anyone listening to me who did not learn about James Tiptree from me? From me. Is there anyone in the world who's handed out more copies of her mass market paperbacks than I have over decades? I know there's no explaining have you read questions, and there's no real way to rationalize them either. It's like man's inhumanity to man. Uh, oh, here's Jared Henderson again. I wonder what will it be this time? Wuthering Heights? Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. Let's see here. Randy Ray, I want to buddy read Batman Odyssey with Steve and Michael K. Vaughan. Oh, that's a little bit of a wild read. That would be. Nick Piccarilli, Jared asked to have you read question. Bro, watch video back on. Yes, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Yes, all of a sudden I'm okay with doing a bro watch. I wasn't expecting it to come from him of all people. Oh. And Aaron also says the subject's the next bro watch is set. And Jenny Park says Jared just wanted to attack you. I know. Grace is good. That says Hamlet. Yes, when we do, if you're new to my channel, you might not remember mandatory read-alongs, where I'm not inviting you, I'm ordering you to read this book because it come to my attention that lots of people haven't. It came to my attention years and years ago that a lot of people had not read Pride and Prejudice. That is not allowable. So I did a mandatory read-along, and Darwin's Origin of Species is the single most important book with a single author ever written. And it came to my attention that a lot of people had not read that either. So you have to read it. It's mandatory. Well, another thing that people have to read is Hamlet. And I bet a lot of people haven't. So it would be the candidate, but I should have started at the beginning of Shake Timber. The Spaminator, there was a huge field directly behind where I grew up. On gloomy days in the early morning, sometimes it would be completely covered in fog, no visibility. I love getting lost out there. Well, I can speak for everybody else when I say, wouldn't it have been great if you hadn't made your way back home? No, the Spaminator is beloved. Balin321, how do you approach stray dogs? Just tend to be very timid. They tend to be very timid. Don't they just run away when you approach? Sometimes the timid ones run away at first, and then they do a double take. Then the ones that run away do a double take. They run, they stop, they look back, and they say, "Oh wait, I want to smooch your face." Richard Reeves, I love weather as a character in art. Yeah, yeah. I always think about the famously missing painting from the Gardner Museum, "Storm on the Sea of Galilee," where weather is very much a character in art, and no one will ever see that painting with their eyes again. That is so wild, even after all this time, even after 23 years. That is so wild. Randy Ray, I discovered James Tiptree in Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine. Well, yes, but you're bitterly old. Richard Reeves, I actually have six paperback James Tiptree that Steve gave me. Yeah, those paperbacks are some of those paperbacks are beautiful. The covers to Star Songs of an Old Primate or Warm Worlds and Otherwise, those covers are lovely, just lovely. Uh, Jared Henderson, it was supposed to be a way to get quick review. Even I make mistakes. Shocking, I know. There are mistakes, and there are mistakes. Okay. The Fantasy Network is here. I'm squeeing like a fangirl. I prefer Spamlet. Eh, a Hamlet mandatory read along is a very good idea, and there's no law that says that has to happen in September. There's no law. That would be so much fun to do. Uh, mm, that would be so much fun to do. Maybe that should go on the list as well. Uh, Aaron says, "What would you recommend for an introduction to Tiptree?" The short story collections. Read the short story collections. Uh, I would put off the novels and just go to the short story collections. There's Warm Worlds and Otherwise, Out of the Everywhere, 10,000 Miles from Home, Star Songs of an Old Primate. Tiptree was. I love her novels, especially Up the Walls of the World. But there's almost nobody better at science fiction short stories. So read the short stories. Any volume will do. Feel free. If you don't mind ebooks, feel free to email me. I'll bombard you with Tiptree. Uh, Balin321, have you read The Little Engine That Could? Let's not start a rash of have you read questions, shall we? Jenny Parks, still never read any Shakespeare. Sorry, please don't hate me. I don't hate you, but we could change it. We could change it. Shakespeare, I always say that you should watch Shakespeare, but you should also read him, definitely. Jared Henderson is back again. Let me retry. Oh, wise, oh, reader, rereaders. Knowing how you have read that Tiptree biography, what is your divine assessment? But you don't know that. You didn't know whether or not I'd read it. You wondered whether or not I'd read a James Tiptree biography. I didn't like it. I, there's a certain uh, sequence of miracles, each more unlikely than the last, that has to happen in order to make a literary biography interesting. It is on my mind because I just read an uninteresting literary biography. It had interesting bits in it, but that's not the same thing as writing an interesting book. And with ordinary biographies, that's not as much of a trick, but with literary biographies, it's the devil's own thing to do. It's almost impossible. And that book did not succeed. Interesting, yes, but not a good reading experience. Monet Doyle, I've changed my mind about what I want to read next. But I think you in the course of this Stevestream, Richards and Reeves, Tiptree in Library of America, maybe, or is she already there? I'd say it's a given that it will happen. A given. I don't know. I don't think she's already there. There were no Tiptree novellas in the two box sets. You have both those box sets, right? She'd be in the second one, the later of the two, but I don't think she is. Is she? Now I don't know. Is Houston, do you read it? in one of those books? I don't think so. I don't think they go up late enough. And I know they haven't done any freestanding. What that would be like. If in a Library of America volume, you could get all of her volumes of short stories into one volume, I bet. Or a box set of 2, the complete science fiction short stories of James Tiptree. Oh my god. Oh my god, wouldn't that be incredible? Uh, let's see here. Fantasy Network, why do modern readers struggle with Le Guin? Yeah, well, I think you know. I'm so overjoyed that you're here that I don't want to cause any bad blood with the whole ecosystem that you represent. You talk to them all on your great discussion videos. Nevertheless, I think the reason why readers struggle with Le Guin is because the one answer to your question would be that readers of a certain age don't struggle with her, and readers of a certain age do. And I think the fault there redounds not to the readers, but to the nature of modern science fiction and fantasy, which tends to be, again, I don't mean to burn a bridge when it's only just been built. But a lot of modern fantasy and science fiction tends to be really dumb. It's intentionally going for the YA crossover readership. I understand why a writer or a publisher would do that because that can add zeros to the end of your paycheck, but it doesn't do anything for your writing at all. And and that might be the reason why people struggle with her because she doesn't write like a lot of current fantasy or science fiction. It's just a diplomatic way to put that. Balin 321 favorite Shakespeare play. Are you asking me? Uh, my favorite is Henry VIII, but the one I always say is Julius Caesar because nobody even knows that Shakespeare wrote a play called Henry VIII. Balin 321, in your Ezra Pound video, you talked about authors who are personally evil and who are atmospherically evil. Do you have an author you enjoy who is personally evil? Probably I have a couple. Yeah, probably I do. Uh, I don't know. I don't know uh, who's going to be listening here, who's favorite or what not. But for instance, Edmund Spencer, if we go centuries past, I could come up with a list of people who were personally evil whose writings I enjoy. Yeah, it's just difficult to do. That's all. The writings have to be excellent. Like I said in that video, I'm not going to enjoy it if it's not. If it has to overcome that kind of weight. The Spaminator, every time I try to get a production of Spamlet off the ground, it falls through. Last time I even had Paulie Shorey signed on to play the title role. Michael K. Vaughan is here. No Tiptree in the Library of America set, unfortunately. It'll happen. It'll certainly happen. Jared Henderson, Tiptree is in a collection called The Future's Female. Okay, that's why I was thinking of Mark, because Mark loves that volume, and I don't have it. So she's in there. Okay, I really need to get that volume. I read it. The Library of America sent it to me, and I loved it. I got rid of it, and I think about it all the time. And I don't remember what Tiptree story is in there. Is it The Women Men Don't See? I can't remember which Tiptree story is in that volume. Uh, let's see here. The Spaminator, Mike K. Vaughan in the house. Well, who knows how long it'll last because this Stevestream has to end. Oh, the Fantasy Network is in the house too. Good Lord. He's not a David Wiley style ambassador from the cloistered fantasy world of BookTube. He's a standing member, a pillar of the community. I agree for the most part. Well, you have to know. I am not meaning to throw around any insults. Uh, I'm just, I mean, and I'm also not meaning to localize the phenomenon to fantasy and science fiction. Look at the prevalence of so-called cozy mysteries in the mystery genre, most of which are absolutely brain piffed in how childish they are. And they are meant to appeal to that. They're meant to be that way. I'm I'm sure that it's intentional, but Le Guin certainly wasn't writing that way. Certainly, she was not. Even her, I mean, how many people are surprised to learn that Earthsea is YA because it doesn't read at all brain dumb. Nothing that she wrote does. I think that's why. I think I could be wrong about this, but anecdotally, you're the one who said it was anecdotal. Anecdotally, uh, I would say that if you get a fantasy reader who's over the age of 45, they won't have any trouble with Ursula Le Guin. They will love her. And they'll love her even if they've never read her before. If they read her for the first time over the age of 45, they'll have no trouble at all. It's younger readers that she isn't doing what they want. She isn't giving them the 15-part epic and whatnot. But anyway, Kevin J.N. reading Casino Royale by Fleming, something different after the Musk biography. Yeah, anything different after the Musk biography, yes. Randy Ray, Michael K. Vaughn must have read my mind when I suggested we reread Batman. We read Batman Odyssey. I don't know why you came up with that. It's so wild. By the time we finish, we'd all need to be committed. Jared Henderson, she clearly deserves her own volume. Library of America did a great job with Le Guin's work. They even published the poetry. Yeah, the Library of America, Le Guin is a monument. But I still want to know what story Tiptree has in The Future is Female. I don't remember off the top of my head, and that's bothering me. DT, should one ever take mushrooms? What do you think of mind altering substances and its effect on a person? I always thought it was a little bit on the lazy side. Uh, the world is full of wonder on its own. It's always struck me as being lazy and unimaginative to try and chemically induce it. You're not seeing anything that isn't already there. You're seeing delusions created by your own brain's biochemistry. And a lot of the stuff that people take has long term deleterious effects, which, of course, I'm against. I'm against taking anything that has long term deleterious effects. Uh, Richardson reads, sometimes writers dwarf their readers. I, I wasn't going to put it quite that bluntly, because I, you know, like you, I mean, your profession is to hold out the door open for all readers. Some readers, yeah, are dwarfed. I think that's a call to like an author rather than rather than not. But I still want to know what the Tiptree story is in The Future is Female. I cannot remember. Randy Ray, the Batman Odyssey is DC equivalent of Phoenix novels. So I don't think so. I don't know what it's the equivalent of. Monet Doyle, I've picked a different book to read next already in this stream. The Fantasy Network. Is there a wiki I can read to help me understand this stream? I'm afraid not. No, no. When I talk, when I'm making a video, when I make a video and I sit down, when I take the deep breath and make sure I don't have, dog crap on me or anything like that, I organize my thoughts at least a little. In a Steve stream, I'm just firing all kinds of things. So I'm quoting all kinds of things just to amuse myself and whatnot, and also referencing at the spur of the moment, at the speed of light, everything that's gone before. So no, it's going to feel like you need a wiki, but no, there isn't one, unfortunately. Frabrusi, have you ever encountered R.A. Lafferty, and are you a fan? I have heard him referred to as sci-fi author. I never actually met him, but I love his work. Absolutely love it. Uh, I cannot recommend Damiano books strongly enough, but also other things as well. I just think they're wonderful. Spaminator, Fantasy Network. No, there is no wiki to understand this at all. My advice would be, if you feel like you need a wiki, come back for a couple more, and you'll love them. Maybe the barriers will go down enough for me to get a much coveted invitation to your talk show. That would be wonderful. Oh, they've been so good lately, though. I don't know how I could keep up. Uh, Jared Henderson. That Library of America collection has The Girl Who Was Plugged In and The Last Flight of Dr. Ain. Oh, no. Okay. Well, all right. That's a little depressing. The Last Flight of Dr. Ain is not particularly strong, and The Girl Who Was Plugged In is, but it's in that and it's in this. I mean, I know they didn't know that when this was coming, but for a book like that, that's all about feminism, I would have picked The Women Men Don't See more than either of those. Uh, but anyway, Jenny Parks, one must just go with the flow and embrace the chaos in the stream. Yes, but not for much longer. We're going to end at 7, and it's 7. Balin 321, would you have walked away from the city of the ones who walk away from Alas? Yes, I would have. Yo, since booktube I am drowning in books I plan to read. I have starter kits on hold. Ahem. My TBRs are wonderfully towering, and I am so easily drawn into many bright and shining new titles. Well, yes, and we've got Victober coming up. Which is another, huge booktube event. There's another event for October as well that I'm drawing a blank on. Uh, uh, Ewan Sinclair, I didn't realize modern readers struggle with the Gwyn. Bizarrely, my introduction to her wasn't a book, but a film adaptation of The Lathe of Heaven. Okay, so you're talking about the film adaptation, not the BBC adaptation from decades earlier. The Lathe of Heaven was adapted by the BBC before there was any such thing as special effects, and that adaptation is amazingly good. It is amazingly good. So if you've only seen the movie with what was it Lucas Haas who was in the movie? If you've only seen the movie, you should find the BBC production of The Lathe of Heaven and watch that because you'll be pleased. You'll be glad that you did. Uh, DT, what do you think of Robert E. Howard's biopic, The Way of the World? Eh, It didn't do anything for me. Mac, who is your top suspect for Jack the Ripper? I think Deb did it. Yo, how do I choose what to read next? It's a mystery. Fantasy Network, Steve, would you be interested in coming on my next episode, Chatting with Nuts? I'd love to have you ruffle some feathers. I wouldn't ruffle feathers. I would be as well behaved as could be. Oh my God. I would love to. Absolutely love to. Don't know how it works. You want to pick a subject or the boundaries of the subject or something like that? I'm sure that we could find plenty to talk about because you are, and again, this is not meant to gild the lily, you are quite a skillful interviewer. You are more skilled at doing that sort of thing than most of the people who try it on BookTube. Not meaning to crap on anybody's attempts. A lot of the tries I really enjoy, but uh, you seem to have it down. You seem to get it instinctively that an interview is a conversation, not an interrogation. That is not easy to come by. I understand that it's probably a reflection of insecurity on the part of interviewers. A lot of these people are booktubers. They're young. They've never done anything like this before, so they're feeling their way. But I always want, when it comes to a sit down interview, there's David Frost and then there's Dick Cavett. And they're both great, but they're doing completely different things. One is taking you through a roster of questions, and the other is starting a conversation and then gently shaping it. And you're very much the Dick Cavett kind. And I would love that. That would be wonderful. I would promise not to ruffle feathers. The Spaminator. When I was a teen, magic mushrooms were popular. I never tried them because some people nearly died from picking the wrong ones. Also, they grew out of cow crap. Yes, when I was not a teenager, but in my early 20s, there was a massive entire cultural movement based around these things, most of which have very little effect on me. But I never understood it anyway. Uh, I never understood the laziness of it anyway. Mac, favorite Catholic nonfiction writers, thoughts on Scott Hahn. Favorite. These are not uh, tossed off questions. I have no idea who Catholic nonfiction writers are. I like nonfiction. I couldn't tell you for most of the nonfiction that I really like whether the person was a Catholic or a Hindu or a Muslim. Wouldn't have any idea unless they were writing about Catholicism. And those books tend to be unbelievably tedious. So I wouldn't have a list of those either to reel off. Jared Henderson, I don't think Le Guin would be published these days. She's too morally ambiguous and leaves quite a bit unsaid. I tend to agree, but I wouldn't want to offend anybody. Mac is responding to Jared. DT, Steve, who was better, Dick Cavett or Johnny Carson? Well, Carson was limited, right? He was limited and he was also had the soul of a stand-up comedian. People forget that about him because he became this wise gray eminence. But he couldn't resist a badump bump play off something. And he was also given a lot of script increasingly as the show went on, as it became more popular. So I mean, Mr. Congeniality, everybody liked talking to him, and he could get a bare moment out of someone, but it was all so canned, so rehearsed. Whereas Cavett was a different world. In his prime, it was a different world. His guests did not know what they were going to get, and they didn't know when he was going to suddenly turn from Mr. Congeniality into doggedly looking for an answer to one thing. And he was also in his prime incredibly canny in getting past the wall that a well-told story can be. You get a good raconteur on there, whether it's Betty Davis or famously Richard Burton, or you get a raconteur on there. Raconteurs often use well-crafted stories as a block to going any deeper, and Cavett knew that perfectly. He knew everything about how that works. So he could gauge his audience, he could gauge his producers, he could see how much time he had left in every segment, and decide for himself whether or not maybe the story is all we get this time, and maybe that's good enough. Or maybe I go through the little chink in the wall that only I can see and blow the story apart. I prefer him to Johnny Carson. It feels horrible to say, but I do. Fantasy Network tried to read Le Guin, but she didn't explain her magic system with a charts idea. I wasn't going to put it that way, but she doesn't do anything like that at all. I'm not saying that modern fantasy readers need that, but that's a lot of what they get. Just the term magic system. I just I never hear it without it grating against me just a little. Jenny Parks, you're ratting out Deb the betrayal. She's used to it. Fantasy Network, thank you for that compliment. I take pride in it. You should. You're not trying. I think it's just natural, or maybe you are trying, but it certainly works. What you're doing. I watched the first one. Oh God, a long time ago. I think I was interested in your guest. I didn't know anything about your channel. Uh, and it was the first thing I noticed. Boy, this kid is, I should say kid. Oh my God. This guy is quite good at this. He's using his instincts and he's staying on the balls of his feet. And you can see that. Well, I appreciate that. That isn't common. Uh, Max, Steve, do you like Protestant writer Gavin Ortlund? Don't think I know Gavin Ortlund. The Spaminator, okay, but seriously, who is your top ripper suspect? We've all been curious about for a long time. No, only you have, which is why you've asked 100 times. And I am serious. Deb's whereabouts for the days in question are not nailed down. Becky Fair, thank you. I love your videos, and the Brattle is one of my favorite bookstores. I might just run into you there. You might very well. You can up your odds. I don't go on the weekends, and I tend not to go late. I tend to be there first thing. I get a lot of errands done before the shop opens. There's a whole bunch of things that I can do in that area before the shop opens, and then I save that as sort of the cherry on top for a treat for when I've done all my errands, sort of business before pleasure. And you feel free to run into me there. It definitely say hello. It has happened in the last few years that I have been at the Brattle, I've been chatting with the staff, or browsing around outside, and then I go and somebody at the shop, whether it's Nicole or Zach or whatever, will tell me later that somebody came up to them when I was gone and said, "Was that Steve Donahue?" Well, you come up to me. Don't come up to them. You don't have to worry about bothering me. Balin 321. I love the Earthsea trilogy, but I dislike the Possessed. The ending ruined it for me. Ruined it. Wow. I understand the ending would be hard to swallow, but ruined it? Uh, uh, wow. Mac, I meant Catholics writing about Catholicism. No names come to mind. Uh, Aaron, what about Tom Snyder? What about Tom Snyder? DT, how are Cavitt's books? They're not worth reading. Oon Sinclair, Cavitt's episode with Richard Burton are wonderful, and the Mel Brooks episode is hilarious. Yeah, the Burton episodes, they will work on you. I think they're on YouTube. The Burton episodes will work on you in a way that, for instance, his episodes with other epic alcoholics don't tend to work on you. Like, for instance, Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole manages to keep that wall up between him and pretty much any interviewer. He is a match for Cavett. That it doesn't work at all. But Burton, I think he realizes pretty. I think you can spot the moment in the interview where he realizes, well, I might as well. I'm not fooling this guy, so I might as well start talking completely honestly. Uh, Balin 321, what is your view on the recent trad cath movement? I know some people who are going SSPX masses now, even people I thought I had left it all behind. Yeah, it's just a fad. I dislike fads just in general, in any way, in any part of life. But I think there's something particularly insulting about a tradcath fad, about something that millions of people, billions of people in the world take very seriously. Uh, Balin 321, do you blame D&D on that trend in fantasy? No, no, I don't. No, I don't. Nope, I blame Robert Jordan and then George R. R. Martin. I blame the people who shaped fantasy and who made, I'd say, an easy 60% of current fantasy readers. I blame the people who came after them, who do what they do in order to make their kind of bank. I, I again, I've got Fantasy Network right here in the chat, so I don't want to say anything disparaging about the modern fantasy genre, but I think it really underserves its readers. It really plays things safe. A lot of it does. Let's see here. Jenny Parks, Spaminator just wants to know if he's in the clear. I don't know. I don't know if he is. Uh, Geo Craftsman, Jack the Ripper could have been Ethel Merman, and my only reaction would be pushing some air through my nostrils. Ewan Sinclair, there's a really good Sherlock Holmes film from the 70s where he investigates Jack the Ripper, murder by decree. Yeah, but it's not really good. It's really bad. Why would you say that it's really good? Murder by decree is really bad. It's odd that you would do that mix up. It's one of the worst Jack the Ripper stories, but also one of the worst Sherlock Holmes Jack the Ripper stories. It's not as bad as Michael Dibdin's book Dying of the Light. Nothing could be that bad, but it's plenty bad. Uh, Jared Henderson, we do not tolerate slander of the dispossessed in this live stream. It wasn't slandering. I've heard something like that from other people. The ending is problematic. It's, the Spaminator, Deb couldn't have done it. She was cheating on you with me every night in question. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. You wouldn't have the vim and vigor to wrestle if that had been true. That's the first thing to go. MM, favorite essayist. Montaigne. DT, or no, Martin S, or no, DT, will you do another Steve stream this month? I'm going to do one tomorrow. Martin S, has there been any spiritual successor to Mervyn Peake? Oh, this one did go above 50, didn't it? I don't know if that's time. We do have to wrap this up. We absolutely have to wrap this up. Let's go to 7:30, but then hard and fast. Uh, but spiritual successor to Mervyn Peake? I don't know. I would need to know what you mean by that. I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know everything about all the fantasy that's been written lately. I haven't encountered anything that even reminds me of it remotely. Maybe that's the answer. Uh, Balin is asking Jared a question. Fantasy Network recently read Sand Kings by George R. R. Martin and loved it very much. Have you ever read it? Okay, the wiki that you needed for the Steve stream is that the one thing to avoid is a "Have you read?" question. It's nothing. Don't mean to wrinkle any. I don't mean to ruffle your feathers. One primary wiki of Steve streams is to avoid "Have you read?" questions, which is asking Steve, "Have you ever read?" and then naming some work, any work at all, because I read an average of 120 pages an hour for an average of 10 hours a day, which means that half the time I'm reading more pages than that per hour, and half the time I'm reading more hours than that a day. And I have been doing that since before your parents were born. Every day, the whole time, since before your parents were born. So your grandmother was heavily pregnant. I was doing that. Your parents were crawling around on the rugs and crapping in their diapers, and I was doing that every day. They were in grade school, learning how to walk, learning what they liked and didn't like, going to high school. Every single one of those days, I was doing that. I was reading a lot every day. uh, uh, anyway, since it's the first time, yes, I have read Sand Kings. I have recommended it many times. That old Timescape mass market paperback, I've given that to I don't know how many people. Every time I see it, I grab it to give it to people. Uh, it is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It's one of the only works of fiction that I've ever read that was in any way creepy to me, genuinely creepy. Horror usually doesn't affect me in any way, and that didn't make me afraid because it's just a story, but it did creep me out, definitely. Talk about an ending, but I recommend it all the time. How I wish there were a really good, accessible George R. R. Martin short story collection that had uh, Sand Kings or Night Flyers, or I could make the table of contents myself. I'd love to do it. I'd love to write the introduction uh, before he was no longer edited. A collection before he was no longer edited would be so wonderful. Actually, that old Timescape volume called Sand Kings is pretty much what I'm talking about. So it will do until back away from the donkeys here. Just dropped in to see Frida and now feel let down. She's right here. She's right next to me. She's sound asleep right next to me. I'm going to have to tell her that we have to go. We have to go OUT. I have to go out in the rain. She's not going to like that. Uh, let's see here. DT, how do you like the writings of Harlan Ellison or Robert Silverberg? I love the writings of both. Jared Henderson, every time I read The Dispossessed, I want immediately to read it again. Wow. Okay. Good. Wonderful. Uh, Balin 321. Okay, guys, I'll come clean. I'm Jack the Ripper. Aaron says, "Is Jack Vance not to be mentioned here?" No, of course. You can mention Jack Vance all you want. Just don't ask. Have I ever read Tales of the Dying Earth? Please don't ask that. That would be great if you didn't ask that. That would be great. We had two Have You Read questions and one Steve Stream. Uh, uh, One thing I wish that I had when it comes to Jack Vance, boy, oh boy, and I had it and I got rid of it. Same old story. That beautiful trade paperback that was made in like the early 2000s, I think. That a big fat trade paperback, multicolored, beautiful illustration on it. How I wish I still had that. That's the Dying Earth book that I want. I just have never seen it in the wild since I had it in the bookstore. Jenny Parks, are you hoping for a different ending, Jared? Oh, right, okay. Fantasy Network, my bad. Well, right. Have you read questions? Just when, if you're tempted to do it, just remember your grandmother being pregnant with your father. Just remember that. All through her pregnancy, when she wanted pickles at 3 a.m., when they were going to the hospital, every one of those days, 120 pages an hour, 8 hours in the day, all of that, the whole time, all that time from then till now. So, Sand Kings, which is one of the most anthologized fantasy horror stories ever, a biography of James Tiptree, an author that I have introduced more people to than anybody in the world. Balin 321, how could you read while traveling? I just die reading in any moving vehicle. Yeah, I'm not cursed with that. I can't imagine that. I've known so many people who could not read when they were in a moving vehicle of any kind. So they just had to sit there bored out of their mind because they could not read. I have not been afflicted with that. I've not been afflicted with that and also seasickness. I don't get seasick. Fantasy Network, yes, I thought Sand Kings was legit creepy. It is. It's one of the only works of fiction that's going for that effect that I think actually achieves it. I know of almost nothing else. There are some moments in Skip Inspector's novel, The Light at the End, their urban vampire novel. There's some moments in there that are a couple of moments maybe in Lovecraft, but they seem so hokey to me. Oh, Michael Avon's not still here. Sand Kings legitimately manages it, and that's not. It's not often that that happens to me anyway. Uh, the Spaminator, who are you kidding? Deb taught me half my signature moves on those cold winter nights. I've been winning matches with the Debbie Downer ever since. Fantasy Network, Dream Songs is a collection that has a good amount. I'm reading Night Flyers now. Dream Songs. Okay, I do remember that. Wasn't that ugly though? It's gonna seem so shallow, but wasn't that an ugly, physically ugly? Oh, it's not coming to me now. What the last copy that I don't have any George R. R. Martin in print here, except the first three volumes of A Song of Ice and Fire with the original cover artwork, that beautiful original cover artwork. I don't have anything else by him. I don't have any book that has his earlier stuff, like Night Flyers or anything like that. Uh, and I should. Now that I'm thinking about it, I really should. Uh, let's see here. The Vegan Heretic. Hi, Steve. I'm getting a late start on Shake Timber. Just read Midsummer Night's Dream. Love the language in that. Are you planning on rereading? No, I have. I don't think I have any Shakespeare on the reading docket for the rest of Shake Timber. I don't think I do. The Fantasy Network. I got to head out. Nice to chat with you, Steve, and folks in the chat. Have a good night. Yes, by all means, email me about the show. That would be great. Aaron, further up, I mentioned that D&D's magic system is based on Jack Vance's books. Okay. DT just discovered Gordon Lish controversy with Raymond Carver. Is Carver better without Lish? Did Lish have any insight as an editor? What controversy? What's the controversy? Lish did a huge amount of the writing that you think of as Raymond Carver. Uh, he played a heavy editorial hand, made stuff that would have been uh, pretentious, insufferable, and unpublishable into stuff that was pretentious, insufferable, and publishable. uh, DT, I read the New Yorker article with Carver before and after edits, and have to say, as dry as Lish's revisions is more interesting than Carver's original, isn't it? Yeah, it is. He made it marginally better. Uh, Balaam 321, but I thought you were 28. Math is difficult. Best not to think about it. Jenny Parks, he's been 28 for a bloody long time. MM, did you ever sub vocalize? I find that no matter how hard I try to suppress the voice in my head, it drones against my will. I've never sub vocalized, no. Jared Henderson, my favorite George R. R. Martin novel is the one word star file on a hard drive I stole from his house while he was busy screening black and white films. The true hipster approach to George R. R. Martin. Balaam 321, did you ever play D&D? I can see the appeal, but never enjoyed it. I've never played D&D, and I bet you can guess why. Oh, what happens when I throw many-sided die down onto a board? What happens in the next instant? Beagles come pounding onto the board. Everything flies everywhere, and one of them eats the many-sided die. And everybody's upset, everybody's yelling, everybody's angry, and they're all looking at me, and I am down on my haunches, face smooching with the beagle because I thought it was the cutest thing in the world. And they're all saying, "What about the dice? What about the thing that the dog ate?" I said, "Well, he didn't chew on it; he just swallowed it. So tomorrow I can definitely have it. I can definitely give it back to you. I'll clean it myself." Never invited back to board games of any kind. But anyway, we're at the end of the comments. I'm going to take the advantage of this to end the Steve stream, even though it's not 7:30, because this has been enormous fun. But this went longer than I thought. We definitely do have to wrap this up. I had a blast. I got a couple of have you read questions, but I also got a couple of people who don't usually show up in Steve stream, so that's wonderful. But I do need to bid you all a fondue because I have writing and reading to do, and also I need to start planning. I need to do some thinking about my little booktube channel, which I never do. I need to start thinking about the next read aloud, the next chapter by chapter read along, the next Steve Tiberius Donahue book club, and what was the other one? What was the other one? Oh, a mandatory read along of Hamlet. That's a lot. That's four things that I need to coordinate, that I need to think about. I want to do all of those things. So all right. So I need to wrap this up. This has been wonderful as usual. I will see you all tomorrow night. We will have another Steve stream tomorrow night. And so I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be in the nighttime. Might be in the afternoon. We'll give it a try. I'm interested in playing around with the times here, but I'm going to wrap this up for now. This video will be up for people to watch. So I thank you all for coming. I will see you soon.